Chapter 16. Arthur, High King of Britain. We came at last out into the vast cavern, I remembered, with its vaulted rock ceiling, and I saw the great round table set all about with chairs, and by the fire the dog, toasting himself with his nose to the ashes. "Bercelet," I whispered to Anna, "that's his dog." And even as I spoke, the dog rose from his sleep, stretched himself awake, yawned, and came towards me, wagging his tail in recognition. From the chair by the fire came a voice. "What is it, Bercelet? Has the boy returned as Merlin promised? Does he have it? Does he have Excalibur with him?" The old man, who now rose slowly from the chair to stand by the fire waiting for us, was just as I remembered him. His hair and beard long and silver white, his face etched with age. The sight of him froze me to the spot, not with fear, but in awe. Awe's like wonder, so when you'll say awesome, it means wow, I'm full of wonder, I'm full of awe. Not with fear, but in awe. Before us stood the great Arthur himself, High King of Britain, the sleeping king, not dead, not a ghost, but alive as we were. His whole life story seemed to pass before me as the king came towards us. How Merlin had called him and trained him, how the young Arthur drew the sword from the stone in London and became the chosen king of Britain, how he freed his people from fear and evil, how he drove out the Saxon invaders, how he loved Guinevere, how Mordred, his own son, had contrived to corrupt the kingdom and all it stood for, the protection of the weak, honour, chivalry, and justice for all. How Guinevere had loved Sir Lancelot, and left Arthur alone to face Mordred at the last terrible battle at Camlan, where so many of the knights of the Round Table had perished, where wounded Arthur had killed Mordred and been borne away from the beach by the Black Queens in a galley, leaving Sir Bedivere on the shore. As he came towards us, the great king was not looking at me or at Anna. He had eyes only for Excalibur. I held it out to him, and as he took it from me, I saw his eyes close in rapture. Rapture's like absolute wonderful happiness, in rapture, joy. He grasped it by the hilt and lifted it high above his head. "Oh, Excalibur!" he cried. "I have you at last. With you in my hand I have the courage and the strength to be a king again, to do whatever it may be that I am called upon to do. How I have longed for this moment." He brought the blade down and gazed into it. I see again reflected in this blade the king I once was, and can be once more. And the next time I shall not fail. I shall not fail myself. I shall not fail the people. He looked up at us and smiled. "Merlin told me you would bring a friend with you on this quest. She has my shield, my trusty shield. Let me have it, girl. Let me hold it." Arthur stood before us, a warrior once more, Excalibur in his hand, his great shield held before him. Chapter 17. The Sleeping Sword. Aha, name of the book. The dog approached the shield cautiously, sniffed at it once, and stepped back nimbly. Arthur laughed at his timidity. "Do you remember, Bercelet, boy? Do you remember me?" "Yes," I replied, remembering it all now as if it were yesterday, but whether it was yesterday's truth or yesterday's dream, I was not sure. "When I was younger, I was trying to walk across the seabed from island to island, and I was cut off by the tide. You saved me from drowning. You brought me back here and dried my clothes, and then you told me the story, your story." So I did, and I always hoped and believed that one day you might return," said the great king. "But I did not know when, and now you're here. I could not know that Merlin would choose you for this quest, that you would be the one who would at last bring me back Excalibur." "It was just luck, I suppose," I told him. "We discovered the sword and the shield at home in our potato field. Lucky accident, that's all it was." Arthur shook his head, turned and led us towards the fire. "No, boy, there's no such thing as luck. It was meant. All this was meant. All that happens is meant to happen. Merlin told me I should soon have my Excalibur again, that he had chosen a messenger who would bring it to me. Nothing happens unless Merlin means it to happen. He sat down heavily and laid Excalibur across his knees. For some moments he sat there running his hand up and down the blade, almost in disbelief it seemed. Burslet came to lie down between Anna and me and looked up into our eyes. Burslet trusts your friend. He loves her, and I see you do too, else you would not have brought her here. Ah, love, trust, sighed the king, sitting back. To love or not to love, to trust or not to trust. This was ever the great dilemma of kings, of men and women everywhere. But I am old enough now, and wise enough, I hope, to know better than I did, and I see in her eyes that she is a good friend to you, and to me, and can be trusted. Tell me, boy, how did it all happen? How did Merlin contrive to bring you to me? So I told him the whole story, from the moment I fell down the hole in the potato field to the appearance of Sir Bedivere's ghost in our kitchen. He told me I had to bring Excalibur and the shield back to you, that Merlin had chosen me for the quest, and he told me other things too. He wants you to know that he loves you, and always did, and meant you no harm by disobeying you after Camelot, after the last battle. It was just that he could not bring himself to throw Excalibur into the lake as you told him. He did not want to believe you were dying, so he thought it would be the end of Camelot if he did. So he tricked you. Arthur laughed at this and shook his head. Old men's tales, he said. Old men believe what they want to believe. They invent their own myths, I should know, for I have been an old man for a very long time. Bedivere did not trick me. My memory of that last battle is as clear as crystal. I killed Mordred. I killed my own son. No man, however old, would invent such a myth. I remember it all, every dreadful moment of it. After the battle, even as my queens bore me still bleeding from my wounds to the galley, I knew Bedivere might have betrayed me. He was a good man, but a weak man too. I hoped he had done my bidding, but in truth I always doubted it. Of all my knights, Bedivere was the only one left alive. There was no one else to help me, and besides, I was too old, too tired to care, near death, as I thought. As he talked on, we listened. The 6 queens brought us each a beaker of soup and some bread, and fish laid out on a great platter. These I caught myself, said the king, his eyes suddenly bright and mischievous. He leaned forward and spoke to us confidentially, almost conspiratorially. They let me out only from time to time, rule me with such a rod of iron, and they're such silent companions, never a word, never a smile. No king ever had a smaller kingdom than this little isle. It's my penance. For centuries I've walked every rock of it, with none but Burslet for company. Loyal friend though he is not much of a one for conversation, but he loves a walk, to chase after the birds, and while he does so, I fish. Those fish I caught early this morning. Eat, my children, eat, they are fresh. I had not expected Anna to speak, for she had done little until now, but gazed at him wide-eyed. Excalibur, sir, she began hesitantly. Is it really a magical sword, as the story says? The great king thought for a while before he spoke. This sword, he began, in the hands of a good king can be a force for good, for justice, for healing. But once corruption and despair have darkened and embittered the spirit, as it had mine in my later years, after Lancelot left, after my beloved Guinevere left with him, then Excalibur lost its power and became a sword like any other, an instrument of death, no more. And now Excalibur is but a sleeping sword, sleeping all these centuries, waiting for a new time, until his king was thought deserving of trust once again. That you have brought it back to me is a sign from Merlin that he believes I am fit once again to be king, should I ever be needed. And when that time comes, he will come himself and bid me once again draw the sword from the stone as I did before. Then, and only then, will this sleeping sword truly awaken. So Merlin has told me, and so I must believe. In the meantime, boy, he said, turning his gaze onto me, when you have both eaten your fill, there is one last task I have for you, that Merlin has for you, before your quest is finished. But do not hurry over your eating. It can wait. All these years I've longed to hold Excalibur again, and I do not want the moment to be over too soon. How long? Anna asked. How long have you been here on Little Arthur? He smiled at me. She is full of questions, your friend. And so she should be. How else do we learn wisdom? I have not counted the years, girl, but my keepers, my guardians, my 6 queens tell me I have been waiting here for nigh on 15 centuries. 15 centuries I have waited to do this. And the old king got to his feet and readied himself. Excalibur held in both hands. And for all I know, he said, I may have to wait another 15 centuries before I can do this again. So I shall make the very best of it. And with that, he whirled Excalibur about his head and cut and parried and slashed and thrust, until at last he was left leaning on the sword, exhausted, his eyes bright with excitement and laughing out loud.